everything that could go wrong this morning. I mean, I broke one of my lights. Right now, I kind of look like I want to be a vampire when I grow up in
You
life.
do.
I do. I'm washed out, man. I mean, listen, I understand.
And a rough night. I get it.
Uh, well, I didn't. I was. How's that? Is that better?
No, vampire boy.
The Big Sell Illuminati, where some of the best in the business discuss what's worked, what's working, and what's failed in selling big sales. Our panel of experts includes Clarity Seeker, a black belt of brands, our snarky marketer, Monique de Maio. CEO to CEO selling is his game. Fortune 500 in his lane. The Lex Luthor of the close, Mark Kennedy. The effective executive, a force on the boards, a buyer on fire, Tiffany Olson. David versus Goliath selling, the prince of process, Sun Tzu of big sales strategy, Tom Searcy. And that's your panel. Now it's time to talk about big sales.
Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of Big Sale Illuminati. And our friend Mark Kennedy is out today. The Lex Luthor of the close. We're not exactly certain where he's at. I just keep getting texts for bail money. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go and put that money, but I know that we're going to get him out. If the number is anything greater than $1,000, he's going to have to take up a collection. But anyway, we're going to talk today about all sales in the language of money. Actually, really what's more important to think is there is no other language in sales but money. All right. So, through the sales process, there's always a push for concrete benefits. The companies you're selling to, they want to know what the concrete actual benefits are, the real results, the tangible outcomes. The demand really comes from a place of higher confidence. They want to know that their investment is going to have a clear result. And interesting thing is in professional services, sometimes in manufacturing and construction and all sorts of things, the offer is in soft benefits, in little things off to that are the difference between us and them. You almost can't get your hands on it. That's not going to get anything done. You've got to figure out how to do that language of money. I remember getting presented to by someone who wanted to sell us strategic planning services, right? Very credible. So it's all good. But fact is that they couldn't tell us what we were going to get out of it except really nice people who cared a lot. I can't say I get the same thing at Christmas, so I should have gone ahead and bought into it at least, but I'm looking for strong money issues. So it is a topic that's near and dear to the hearts of our team here because we deal a lot with money. So let's open up with, I'm going to throw out something to Tiffany, our buyer on fire, the person who sits in many, many meetings in which lovely, smart, soft benefits are offered. And at the end of it, light candles, kumbaya, and put on some spa music. And she's supposed to go buy tens of millions of dollars. What's the biggest deal have you ever sold? And what was it worth to the customer you were selling to in a physical hard dollar way?
Tom, when you started talking about spa music and candles, I kind of went into another zone. So I'm going to try to come back here now and talk about one of the biggest sales that I had. It ranked up there pressure-wise because I had just started a new job where I was responsible for sales, but the sales force was really not well trained. And they weren't trained in pricing, but more importantly, in how to differentiate. Because when you talk about the value and what you get, if you cannot differentiate your products and services from the competition, you will never get a premium. You will always have to sell on price. And in order to get it, if you're just a commodity, people are looking at what is the lowest price, and someone can always beat you on that. So this particular sale, it was a contract with our largest customer, and it was up for rebid. Now, they had this central buying process. So, I mean, y'all know the group, all been associated with it. They're totally detached from the end users. They don't even co-locate in the business.
I refer to them as the children of Satan, just kind of as a short for the words like procurement and those kinds of group. This is actually devil spawn, short term. Anyway, sorry about that.
And they totally out of touch with what the users want. And to a certain degree, they are not aligned in incentives because their incentive is lowest price to actually purchase, not the value. Well, anyways, so they did central buying. There were 50 locations, so very high compliance. And this was big. And our sales force was scared. I was scared. I was new. I don't want to lose our biggest customer during the first couple of months on the job. So what I started to do, as every good salesperson knows how to do, and that's ask questions. But these questions were within my own company. So one of the first questions I asked is, what did central buying department know? What did they know about us? Well, they knew they had power. They knew they had the power of compliance. They were big, and they knew that they could make or break a company because with 50 of their areas using it, they had a lot of power. But here's where the tide shifted, because we currently had 80% share of those 50 locations. So my next question to the group, my internal group, was, what differentiates us? Incredibly difficult for them to articulate. We took a while. We even went out and asked some of those customers, because why did 80% of these people like us, buy from us, and depend on us? They did have other choices. So we asked some of them, and what came out was exactly what made us different. We had some unique products. We had the largest service range. We were on time all the time with our delivery, high quality, and they trusted us. And I know you talked about that earlier, Tom, but trust with the customer does have a value. So now we had actually found our value, which was great.
Okay, so let me interrupt you for just a second. You've said a couple things that I want to hit on. One is that I loved it. Price is a non-different differentiation when you're talking about money. If it's the only differentiation that you have, you're commoditized. So I love the way that you said that. I love the fact that your answer was leverage had to come from someplace else than price. And so they had the leverage at 80%, but you really actually had leverage at the 80%. So looking at who had the leverage, you wound up having the leverage inside of that. And everything you're talking about goes back to the same thing. It's about money and how they could evaluate based upon trust has a premium.
Yep.
The fact that your on-time delivery meant that there was no interruption, no loss of money on their side. Through that you would provide a bulk, which might be not on an overall unit by unit base, but on an overall service base. So everything you said, because you could have just said trust and not given any hard dollars to it, right? You could have said we do our very best to get it on time, and there would not have been any hard dollars to it, right? So you could equate it to money, and then they could buy it based upon money.
And here's where the golden goose of this was in my probing internally and getting our own people to think about this. So here was the golden goose. There was a switching cost that end user would bear in their operation budget, but it wasn't part of that central purchasing budget. And the central group did not understand this. So they didn't really understand that there was a switching cost. They didn't understand the value of what the quality and some of the uniqueness went and what that was. So what we set out to do was to educate this central buyer.
Such an important part is that idea that when we're talking about money, there's still an expense. So even though you picked up an incremental this, you still have an exponential that as far as the switching cost.
That's a great story. That's really great.
It's a great story. I think about that idea, Monique. I have always loved your directness. It probably doesn't come through in the pod, especially after we edit. After we edit, then like nothing comes through. The last one I listened to right now, it could have just been one beep when you were talking. We just had you totally toned down. Anyway, but sorry about that. Hey, when you've been selling to a company, because yours are, there's ways in which your approach can be looked at and not given its full relevance around money, or it could be otherwise. How do you get people who do not think the services that you have can be numerically measured? What do you do about getting the metrics right?
To segue off of Tiffany's point, which I think is really important, is I try not to put myself in a line item bidding situation where my widget, against somebody else's widget. When you're selling services and complicated services is at that, you can't start to line item your deliverables. You can't. I mean, I've just been asked to do that the other day by a referral. As you know, I don't engage in any conversations with people unless there's a warm referral involved. And this is somebody that I've been working with on a team with a client for like 5 years or so. So she's working with a different client. And said she's in development, so this is a nonprofit. And they said, "Well, we want you to line item these deliverables." I said, "No, no, we don't do that." And I'll tell you why we don't do that. Because you as the client are not going to want to hear from me that I estimated this and you took 3 times longer to make the decision, so you spun my wheels for 3 more months. Unless we want to line item it both ways, it's probably not something we want to actually talk about, because we're going to be under in one area and we're going to be over in another. But at an aggregate, these are all the things that you're going to get. But more importantly, here's what you don't have. So I start with the absence of what I see in their marketplace and in their context. Their positioning is usually the problem. They don't know who they are for the market, and the market doesn't know who they are for them. So it's a two-way street. The customers aren't clear, they're not clear to the customers, etc. So what would that clarity deliver for you is what I paint a picture about. That clarity would allow you to touch base with these constituents, which you're not speaking to now, these audiences, which you don't have now. What is that worth to you? So let's do an extrapolation of a revenue possibility so that we could see, by doing clarity really, really well, this is what happens. So direct line from time to money. Again, I always speak to time to money, time to market, because those are the two things you care about, because that's what's going to drive the revenues at the end of the day. I say I'll start with, anybody can do a pretty website. That's not what you need. Anybody can do a beautiful brochure. Anybody can do a great outreach campaign. Are you going out with the right message to that audience to drive the incremental revenues that you need?
I was just gonna say, Monique, that really resonates with me, because one, you really make sure that the buyer knows what they're gonna need from you. I mean, it's just they really understand that, and then kind of you set your pricing in the way that you price accordingly. I always think that the value of the sale is in the seller who is actually courageous enough to ask for it. So for me, that becomes just very important. And I think, Monique, your story just highlighted that.
There's a ton of things that I liked about what you said. I like the idea that if we're going to talk about line items, it needs to go both ways. In the services business, when they try and drive, when buyers try to figure out, how do I measure comparatively, I don't think they do it out of some sort of malice. They're just like, I don't know how to look at that. And they fall into the trap of hours and trying to bill by the hour. And your answer is, okay, my time's worth something. So that's fine. We're going to leverage that way. Second thing is that you made the statement that clarity equals money. All right.
Yeah.
You want to be clear about what you're getting, about what you're doing, about what's occurring. So you as a customer need to understand that clarity has a value to you. And I think the third thing is that, hey, you want to talk differential, speed to money. If somebody else can get you near to our results, but it takes them 6 months, and we get the result inside of 6 weeks, then the fact is that the value of getting that done faster has its own financial metric. I love the way you put that. And now comes my shameless plug.
You always have one.
I don't always have one. I often have one. This is one of those ones. I just want to let you know, this is a story that I just published in my new book called The Secret to Big Sales, Using Executive Language to Close More Deals. Just came out, available on Amazon. And I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of stories in there, but one of them is about selling with a CEO and helping a CEO of a $350 million company. And it was for system install. for equipment back when companies had large servers and they had server farms in their own businesses and they installed software and etc. And he was against it because he had capex, capital expenditure limitations from his board that would not allow him to spend any more than X amount of dollars on anything that would be installed. Well, not going through all of it, we converted it and said, your company counts money this way, your board counts money this way, but you need results by counting the money a different way. So sometimes money is not about just the dollars themselves, but how they count it. And so in this particular case, we took and said, we'll shift this to a variable cost inside of a per license basis, fully loaded with a 3-year ongoing support contract with that. Now it drops right into the income statement and drops right out of the balance sheet. The balance sheet was what the board wanted to know about. The income statement was how he managed the business. All of a sudden, he doesn't need board approval to make this decision. As long as he's able to continue to be profitable, do all those things that are out there, he can make the decision. The money didn't change.
Really important point, because a lot of big ticket dollar items, where maybe somebody would capitalize it, if you can give any type of other alternatives on that, that is huge for companies and huge for getting a sale.
Yes, thank you for that. And now that most things are SaaS model based and you have this OpEx versus CapEx conversation, that has now become a table stakes conversation. So you got to do one step better than that, because the expectation is that you're going to come in with the opportunity to OpEx it. So now in tech,
Yeah.
it's right. So now you got to play the catch up game of, well, if everybody's able to do the same thing, that's no longer a differentiator. What can we layer on top of the cake that's going to make it compelling and different?
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because we're working with another tech right now, exactly what you're talking about. SaaS deal. The issue was they knew that they were going to have upgrades. Upgrades are easy to put in there. Maintenance is easy to put in there. Unexpected changes to the software don't show up as a line item. And if they did, that's the place people dive in. And so what we find with the teams are, can you build in a fluff margin that we can manage inside of either your ongoing maintenance or put it in there as a buffer in your upgrade? Put it in those places, not as a way to cheat anybody. It's really as an issue of, I anticipate there are going to be expenses that are coming forward because I can look back in history and I know there's going to be expenses going forward, and I don't have a line item that says we don't know is going to happen. It just isn't in there. And so that's another place where exactly what you're saying on the world right now, for most effective salespeople, some of the questions that they ask are around the simple question of, how do you count your money? And that's that's the kind of executive language that keeps you in the CXO level and not getting delegated down to, Satan's spawn bar and stuck at a lower level, which makes me wonder, Tiffany, you are very nice. You're Midwest nice. You're Minnesota nice. You're not New Jersey, New York, like some people on this call. And so I can't imagine you ever throwing anybody out of a room, but have you ever been in a room with somebody that you said you knew that you were not getting the level of attention, financial discussion, or whatever that was mattering to you? Did you ever exit a meeting quickly, and it was a half-hour meeting, and all of a sudden you were hoping that your phone was going to call you away, and you exited in 7 to 10 minutes because you didn't hear what you wanted about money? Has that ever happened?
Yes, it has. So you're right. I've never thrown anyone out of my office because, my Minnesota upbringing would never allow me to do that. But I have given them death stares. Really? You've got to be kidding me. Or make up an emergency reason of why I've got to get out of the meeting. Or if I really think it's bad, I'll have somebody come in and I'll just say, hey, 10 minutes from now, come on in and let me know I've got something going on. So when that usually happens, I will delegate to someone, but only if I feel that there's a business solution, because I don't want to waste my people's time. I don't want to waste the person that came in their time. And I will delegate down for kind of two reasons. One, if the financial deal isn't big enough for me to be involved in. So it's just one, it's not going to be a game changer. That's the second one, to really move that business, but maybe it's still very important. So I just remove myself from the discussion. And then, if my direct report comes back and says, hey, listen, this is a really big deal, then I'll re-engage back with the seller and just make sure that I fully understand what's going on. But I will definitely disengage someone, and if I think that they still might have some merit within the organization, then I'll refer them to somebody. Otherwise, I'll just thank them and let them know at this time or not it's not a fit.
Time is a currency, right? And the fact is that you're spending your time, which is like spending money on something. And if you don't see a return on the time you're spending, then that makes complete sense. Now, my hunch is that Monique in her backyard has a variety of buried bad ideas that have been sent to her where people met with her and she said, "Oh, I've got a spot for you in my garden because you're not going to spend any more time in my office." Do you have one of those that's happened to you, Monique?
Oh, I have a lot of those. I know I get a bad rap for being from the East Coast, but or at least by way of some other continent. But anyway, I think like Tiffany, I used to just when I was in corporate, I would just disengage myself from the meeting and let the poor schnooks that were there to take on the meeting. Or now, in Zoom land, and now in the last few years where I've had my own company, I'll say, I think we've got the general premise. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate understanding your solution a little bit better, and we'll be in touch one way or the other. Thank you.
After my team and I get a chance to talk about this. It's always when my team and I get a chance to talk about this.
Which is pretty much code for, I don't think you're going to make it, right? Isn't it?
Yes.
It's code in my world for I'll forget your name before I hit the door.
I did throw somebody out of my office once, though.
Oh, tell us.
Well, it was the same idea. So this was publishing. I was a publisher of a trade magazine, and the sales rep got so super excited about doing business with this huge publishing company that would become our largest client. They were known for being nasty, and I'll just leave it at that. And they came in and they were ready to give the store away. And the deal was literally unprofitable. And I said to them, do you understand what you're proposing here? Do you understand how much you're giving away? That you've now created a scenario where if we want to renew this contract, we can't. So you're going to set us up to have zero value in 12 months. So you can take right? No good. So you have to see this as a long-term play and lifetime value of that client, customer, however you want to refer to them. Not, I'm going to get a great commission this quarter. And you've got to get out of that thinking. So I said, you need to go back and recrunch those numbers and come back to me when you have something that we can actually make money from.
Well, this all comes back to the issue right now is big sales has to do with money, and all sales have to do with money because in the end, you can calculate it. It's something you can justify. And we're talking about, millions, tens of millions of dollars, you're going to be at the right level. If you're talking about a $100,000 deal, you're not going to be talking to the owner or the CXO or the CEO. You're going to be talking to somebody further down. You get to the seven-figure difference, and it may be money to you. More importantly, it's money to them. You may be saying my fee is X, but your result is going to be, 100X. So the counting of the money is really, really important on their side. I will tell a story. I'm a guy that kind of runs out on soft benefits. If you come and you're a consultant and you want to go ahead and talk to me about culture and communication and developing long-term strategy and all those kinds of things, I honor and respect the people who can do that kind of work when it makes a difference. And so they come in and, but every once in a while, I have gotten somebody into the office and they've said, right now we do a 360-degree review, find out what's going on in your organization. We set aside, what are some key initiatives that need to move forward. We meet every week to drive those. And I said, that's okay. That makes sense. how much money does that save us, and how much money does that grow? Well, the other organizations we've worked with, they've seen huge improvements in what they've done and a lot of velocity. I said, no, I need to understand. I'm going to give you $1. How many dollars do I get back? Well, we don't really look at that way. And I said, I've got to ask you a question. How did you get in my office? I just need to know, because there isn't anybody on my team who couldn't answer the questions I'm asking right now before they got me into my office. I can only imagine that you parachuted in. And I was just being funny about it, but they said, well, I said, when you've come up with the answer to the questions I've offered right now, we'll take some more time to talk about it. But it sounds to me like it's a lot of trust on my part and a lot of money on my part for benefits that you haven't really thought through. And that's just the way this is going right now. For us to have an equitable relationship, you've got to think about my money more than you're thinking about your money. And then, I said nice things, took business cards, shook hands, told someone on the way out to give them some coffee. And, I asked the person in HR who'd sent them in, what date they'd like on their resignation letter. Because if you send that frickin' kind of person in my office again, I swear you're going to be the one going out with them. Hugs and kisses, Tom. So, those are all soft benefits. I'm not saying soft benefit opportunities don't exist with hard benefit numbers, but you damn well better know what they are. And otherwise, you're wasting an executive's time.
I think that's even more important in the services sector, because in a product scenario, you can point to certain things and say, look, without this component, you can't make that component, which means you can't go to market with this product, and so on and so forth. When you're talking about especially a professional service or a technology service or something, and its services are complicated, you really have got to do a couple things. Stay away from being commoditized. Stay away from being line item comparatives, or being compared on a line item basis. And also being unclear about the ROI that you're going to deliver upon. Because if you're unclear about that ROI, it also makes a statement that you're unsure of your process, you're unsure of your services, you're unsure of the results you're going to get, which makes that person stand back and go, if they're unsure, how can I be unsure? Which goes back to Tiffany's point about trust.
Well, and it goes back to Tiffany's point from the very beginning, which is without any of these other things, I'm just stuck with price. If you've taken away any other value that I can establish other than price. Good episode. Good to have everybody there. Congratulations first to Monique. Monique has a new podcast coming out called Possibilities with Monique de Maio. Yes. And you can find that on Spotify right now. And very, very interesting interviews and things that she's got going on. You can go online to Amazon and buy our new book, which is called The Secret to Big Sales. And if you do that, you send it to me, I'll be happy to go ahead and sign it. But anyways, between now and the next time we talk, we wish you the best with all of your next big sales.
Thanks for listening to the Big Sale Illuminati podcast. If you like this episode, give us a thumbs up and let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Until our next episode, best wishes on your big sales.